guys, and welcome to a video that I've been promising for such a long time that it's finally time I sat down to record it. If I've kept you waiting, I'm so sorry, but if you've ever had that one question in the back of your mind, what's gonna happen in Maxton Hall Season 2, you've reached the right place of the internet, because in today's video, I will go ahead and give you a full spoiler breakdown of every single event that takes place in the book, just the way it happens, so you know exactly what to expect and what will be coming in the show, which is perfect. So it's gonna be a long one. Let's just jump right in. So now for context, before you start watching this video, I would like to say that if you want more background information on this, I have a couple other videos on the subject. One being my vlog from earlier in this year, wherein I read all of these books because they are converted from books into a show, except I read the German original ones and gave you a non-spoiler breakdown of everything that happens. It's good if you want like a brief gist of everything that goes on in the show without actually spoiling key details and the exacts of it, and you can probably just go watch that, or you can watch the next video I made. I think it was fairly recently, wherein I was giving you a full spoiler breakdown of the first book in the series when it came out in English. Now I personally would recommend that you go ahead and watch my first video, the full spoiler breakdown on the first Maxton Hall book, which I made in English recently, before you watch this video, because while the show is very well adapted to the book, exact details are picked up just the way they are. There are a couple events here and there that aren't really done and happened in the show yet. So if you want to know exactly what's going to happen in this book, it would be good to have that knowledge to preface with, because otherwise you will be a little lost in the video, especially because there are scenes that happen at the very end that will throw you off completely because they didn't happen in the show but now are going to be something we have to grapple with in this book specifically. And so it would be good background context knowledge if you want it, and so I would definitely recommend you go watch that video. But if you don't care, you just want to jump right into this, you're always welcome, and then we can just do that. And now that the second one has come out in English, I'm here to give you a full spoiler breakdown of the second book, so you know what to expect when the second season of the show comes out, because I know there will be some impatient people like me out there who don't really want to go through the effort of reading the book but also want to kind of find out what happens next, because trust me, I've been there googling spoiler reviews wondering what to expect, because I don't want to be in for shocks. I want to know what kind of cliffhangers are coming my way, and there will be quite a few, especially in this one. So strap right in. I'm going to start my spoiler reread and breakdown of every single event that takes place. I won't be telling you about exact conversations, but I will give you quite the timeline of what goes on in this book. So I'm gonna start my reread of it now, since I already have the English version downloaded to Kindle, and I'll come update in a little bit once I have some progress made. But basically, it's finally time to come actually discuss and break this down and hype those up for who are waiting for the show to come out in the next couple of months. So let's start. I'm so excited, I'm so happy that we're doing this, and it's time. Hi guys, so it's a little bit later. All I've done is read. I've done nothing apart from reading, and so I've got quite some progress in. I just made it to chapter 9. I'm 25% of the way through. We've already finished a quarter of the book. It is flying by. That's one good thing about these books. I just speed through them. It's just they aren't really worth a reread, which is why I am getting bored, because I do remember certain bits. I just don't remember enough that I can come summarize without having to go over the whole thing, which is why here we are. I am doing the reread even though I don't really feel like it, but also I feel like it's perfect vibes because the weather outside is starting to get fall-like colder or whatever. Temperatures are starting to decrease, and I feel like this matching up with the book timeline is just, for me personally, I wasn't really having the biggest urge to do this. It's just I promised I would, so here we are. But I have my notes written out. I've got like a whole bunch, which is why I'll give you my pointers, tell you everything I've read so far, and then we can move on. After this right now, I am gonna be going for dinner, and then later I will be posting a different video tonight, which is why I don't know if I'm doing any more reading. But tomorrow I have the entire day off, which is why, since we were able to finish literally a quarter after just locking in for like a couple hours now, I have a good feeling that we can probably just finish the entire book out tomorrow, which is probably what we'll do. So stay tuned for a bunch of sit-down updates back to back. But until then, now time for updates as to what I currently read in the 8 chapters I got through. So we're basically given a brief glimpse as the book starts into James and Ruby both self-destructing, except it's from Lydia and Ember, both of their siblings' point of view. So you actually watch the siblings concerned over, their brother and sister, but they can't really do anything about it because James, he's self-destructing in the sense that now his mom is dead. So he's, on drugs, he's drinking all the time, he's disconnecting and disassociating from the world, and also because he cheated on Ruby, he's kind of thinking about that. And then Ruby, on the other hand, she's not getting out of bed, she's not responding to anything, not on her phone, not communicating with anyone else. So it's kind of similar in the sense that they both just want to disconnect and their siblings are concerned. Now for a quick context on the events going on in the background, if you didn't watch the first video, basically at the very end of the first book, you find out that James's mom, Cordelia, she kind of dies of a stroke. There's no foul play involved there, in case anyone's wondering, because I know that's something everyone speaks about and theorizes about, but it just didn't happen. She naturally died of a stroke, and because James reacted from the news, his father held it from him and Lydia for 2 days while they were at Oxford to not mess up their interviews. James kind of lashes out when he hears that or whatever, and so as all of this is happening, when Ruby goes to fetch him after looking for him the entire day with Lydia, they actually find James kissing Elaine. It's technically Elaine who kisses James, but he doesn't push her away, and because he's got that mental fog after just finding out that his mom passed away 2 days ago and he wasn't aware, he basically kind of cheated on Ruby, and I feel like it counts in my opinion at least. And so this book is also my least favorite in the series because he's supposed to be groveling now, except I know everything that went down with it. I know there's no moral black and white, it's all gray, but I personally still don't support a cheater despite everything that's happened in his background, which is why here we are. This is the book where he's gonna try to make up for Ruby's forgiveness. And so with all this context, basically now they're at the funeral scene or whatever, and as you find out, their father has actually hired someone else to plan the entire funeral. He cannot be bothered to do so because he's more busy running Beaufort and trying to figure out management details or whatever. So that's just something I found interesting to point out because it will come up later in the book. Now also something I wanted to mention is that this book you're actually starting to get people different perspectives or whatever from the friend group. So it's not specifically just James and Ruby, you're getting every single person in the entire character spiel or whatever. So it's good because you are getting a range of emotions coming in and you are connecting with every character, and I found that really interesting because that didn't happen in book 1. Also, I wanted to quickly mention I cannot wait for Graham's perspective even though I've already read the book, because he's actually not aware that Lydia is pregnant and this detail just came up, so I thought I'd mention it for you guys as well because maybe y'all are wondering, y'all are interested, but basically he just doesn't know shit at the moment, and so here we are. Anyway, back to the whole funeral story. Now there's a press release that comes out stating Cordelia Beaufort's death and then the management of the actual Beaufort Empire for the public or whatever. And as soon as Ruby finds out that the whole reason why James did what he did was maybe because he was reeling from after finding out about his mom's death, she doesn't necessarily forgive him. She's still hurting, but she does end up going there to visit James and kind of see how he's doing. So she visits his house along with her friend, I forgot her name, I literally just read it, Lynn. So when she gets there, James basically has a breakdown. He kind of understands what he did and what was wrong, but you can't go back in the past and fix it. So that's where the mindset that they're at right now. Later, he comes out of his room and now he's kind of speaking to his friends for the first time because now he had that interaction with Ruby. He's coming out of his shell and he realizes how worried everyone's been because everyone knew his mom but didn't really know what happened, and now everyone's reeling from the kind of pain everyone's going through, and he understands that just he's not in it all alone, and so that's something to consider. Now the next scene we have is the funeral scene, and this is very important because you're introduced to another character here. You actually watch them kind of enter the funeral grounds or whatever, and there's one person standing there that Lydia wants to go hug but she cannot because her father stops her, and it's Ophelia, her mom's sister. So now if you watch my first video, Ophelia does come up, her mention or whatever one time, and I mentioned that you need to remember her as a character because it's very important in the grand scheme of things. I feel like she might be the most important character for the whole dramatic turn of events. So again, she's mentioned, she's shown here for the first time, and she did attend the funeral. It's just they were not allowed contact, but basically she is in the picture. Remember her because she's very important. Another thing about the funeral scene I wanted to mention is how heartless their father is, because he actually tells them that don't have any tears or whatever, so you're watching your mother being buried. don't cry, so that the press doesn't get material. And while it does make sense, asking them to do that is also emotionally stripping them away after everything he's done throughout their childhood and the worst kind of life he's already given the two of them. And so I don't know, I just feel bad for the two of them, Lydia and James, the kind of life they've lived, especially under Mortimer. And while you do kind of see him kind of getting justified in this book, I feel like he doesn't deserve like a healing arc, but at the same time I am conflicted because the way it takes place at the very end of this book, it makes sense, but at the same time he is the last person who should be getting it, especially the way he's treated them. And so it's kind of 50-50, again a very gray area to approach, and it's definitely something to consider in terms of social commentary if you're reading the book and go deeper into it. Now the next day you're back in Ruby's perspective. She goes to Maxton Hall and there's these rumors flying around wherein she's James's secret girlfriend, and they're particularly nasty. So Keshav, one of his friends, kind of comes up to defend her, and now with the background of Kesh and Alistair's romance, because it's all secret, he understands the secret allegations or whatever, so he's standing up for her, and she doesn't know anything about that yet. She only watches and remembers, I think, catching them from the first book, but you're actually watching his character come in clutch right now, and honestly I love him. I love him and Alistair. They're like my number 1 and 2 in the book. I just want happiness for them basically. Now the same day when Ruby gets back home, she actually ends up looking up James and seeing the kind of articles and stuff there's about him online. She also finds his Instagram account and there's a bunch of like horrible comments there, and so because she still feels for him, she goes ahead and deletes all of them. And as all of that's happening, she kind of scrolls to his profile, finds this one photo of him that feels so legit and genuinely in the moment. It feels like one of those natural in the moment photos. I know there's a word for it, but I just cannot remember, so if I remember at the time of editing I'll have it on screen. And so she ends up downloading the photo to her computer because she still has feelings for him, she just doesn't know how to express it. And then she ends off that chapter by going ahead and sending out a couple of heartbroken texts, thinking of James, thinking of Lydia, kind of reaching out to the two of them, except nothing goes beyond that because again she cannot consider anything because she is hurt from what James did. Now on to the next chapter. Basically we kind of watch Ruby and Ember's sister dynamic, and we get a glimpse into that because Ruby's finally starting to open up and confide in Ember as to what happened with James and what truly went down, and why she's been in bed pretending to be sick but really just heartbroken all these days long. Because now that Ember finally gets the truth, Ember is kind of supporting the two of them. She is the biggest like Ruby James fan, and so here we are, we're watching them interact. But as all of that's going on, their mom kind of walks in and lets them know that Ruby has a visitor. So Ruby thinks it's James. She goes out to see who it is, and it turns out it's Lydia. Remember how she sent a text the previous night or whatever? It was to let Lydia know that she's here to talk, she's here for anything in case Lydia ever needs it, because Ruby's the only person who at the moment at least knows Lydia's pregnant, and it's a huge secret to keep, at least for the moment or whatever. So she wants to be there for Lydia in every possible way, and as it turns out now, Lydia has taken her up on that offer. She's waiting in her living room. So it basically turns out that Lydia actually comes here to ask Ruby if she would come with her to this like gynac appointment or whatever, because it's just like a basic checkup for her kid or whatever, but she just wants to ensure the good health of her child, and so she just doesn't want to go alone. And Ruby, the good person that she is, she agrees. So they end up going there together. As it turns out, there's another thing that happens, so prepare, just go sit down if you're standing and watching this. Lydia's having twins. Bombshell dropped. And in the midst of everything else, she doesn't know how to react again, because there is one thing that comes up earlier in the book that I forgot to mention, but Lydia actually thinks about it, saying that now that her mom's dead and Graham's mom also isn't in the world anymore, her kid won't get a grandma's love. And here you find out she's not having one kid, she's having two. So the secret is going in even deeper now because she doesn't know how to confront it. No one else knows. Her father would react in the worst way possible, and Graham doesn't know. So now Lydia's in a deeper hole that she was in. So Ruby, being again the good friend that she is trying to cheer her up. She takes her to her mom's bakery to kind of spend a day of normalcy together and kind of make Lydia feel better. And in all of this, you get one good thing about this book specifically, even though I hate again this one specifically. It's that Lydia and Ruby's friendship is kind of blossoming outside of Ruby's like relationship or situationship that's happening with James right now, because regardless of everything, she's still there for Lydia, and I feel like that just shows her character's true nature as a person, and I feel like that's really good. Also, I just remember that word that I was saying, the natural in the moment photo, I meant a candid photo, and that's what she downloads to her computer. So even though she still loves James and there's still complicated feelings there, she's still there for his sister even though she doesn't have to be, and she's the only person who's there, which is great. it. I don't know, I just love that storyline so much. And now finally, in the last chapter that I ended up reading just now, chapter 8, after her day out with Ruby, Lydia kind of realizes that she also needs to be Ruby James, kind of push them back together. And so while she has been urging the two of them for the like past few chapters or whatever, she actually goes and takes a stand up with James and lets him know that, hey, you were kind of in the wrong, so you need to kind of get out of that shell and start talking and interacting more and stop going back into yourself, because you're not the only person facing grief. And while you still see James kind of hurting, he needs to also realize that there's other people with other lives and other bigger problems and bigger fish to fry, like Lydia, who are still there for him. So he needs to come out, kind of interact more with her, kind of share those feelings or whatever, and go back after Ruby, because the two of them, they're great for each other. They just need to open their eyes and see that. And so she's again a huge Ruby James fan, trying to bring them back together and letting him know that, listen, hey, there's still potential with Ruby. Do not squander it and waste it. Go back after her, grovel, do whatever you can, but win her back. And so that's where we end off right now. While James necessarily doesn't really respond to what Lydia says, he lets her know that, listen, we've never had the kind of sibling relationship before the mom died wherein we do shit like this, so don't start it now. He still gets that mental reminder that, listen, you need to kind of work back for what you had with Ruby. And so that's where we stop off right now. Now I'm on chapter 9. I'm gonna go back to reading maybe tomorrow, like I said, so I'll give you updates probably tomorrow at this point, maybe at the 50% mark, because I don't want there to be too many updates at this point. I want there to be just enough, but at the same time I want to speak about everything. So in this video, like I said, I will be giving you only event summaries. So every event that was major enough that I think it caught my attention and it's important in the grand scheme of things, I have mentioned so far. But every single conversation that happened between every character, the development and stuff, character growth and timeline that you get to watch, none of that is mentioned. So if you're still watching this video at this point, I would like you to at least consider, and I'd urge you to do it if you can, to go ahead and pick this book up, because now there isn't really any excuse. It's out in English anyway, and it's great to actually watch the internal dynamics of the group. What I am doing is kind of like a surface line, almost full spoiler theory, but I still feel like there could be so much more considering every single interaction they have, which I'm not summarizing here. So if you haven't already, definitely pick these books up. They're so worth reading, especially the last one. I cannot wait to get through this book specifically so I can read Save Us, because I remember loving that book so much. So here we are. Cannot wait to see how the show is adapted now in comparison to the book, because we have a lot of grief heavy episodes coming if the way the book is going right now shows us, with the undertones and under themes of feeling. But I cannot wait for the show to come out regardless, and this is kind of getting me excited for when it does. So here we are, hype is building back up. I'm gonna go soon now and pick my book up, but I'll see you all maybe tomorrow, like I said. So that's it for this longest update. Hopefully you aren't bored of me yet, but do pick up this book if you can, because it's so good when it gets to the good bits. That's it. I'll see you all now. Bye. Hi guys, so it's now the next evening. I have done so much more reading in the midst of everything else. So I posted my video, stayed up a little bit, read on my Kindle, then I went to bed. But then this morning, ever since, continued reading, and now I've managed to hit the 53% mark. So we're just a little over halfway. I was waiting for the chapter to get over, and then I was just like, listen, hey, have to come in and update. So here we are now. I have all my thoughts and notes written down to come give you, and let's just directly jump in because it's gonna get really long. But I will specifically say this book is still dragging and lagging for me specifically, because I feel like the purpose of this book was important to the series, but this book specifically is boring in my opinion, because it feels like not a lot is happening, especially up until this point, and while I'm waiting for shit to happen, I'm getting bored. So here we are. I'm gonna go keep reading. It's very important in the healing arc and character development of the entire series, but nothing specific happens in it, which is why it's not holding my attention span. So I'm gonna give you a gist of events so you actually get what I'm trying to say right now. But basically, since the last time I came in, the next chapter you find out that it's New Year's Eve and all the girls have kind of organized this like girls' night in for Ruby to kind of cheer her up. So there's her sister Ember, her best friend Lynn, and James's sister Lydia, and they're having the best time ever writing their resolutions. But then Ruby Ruby realizes that she just cannot move on because she's just still hung up and hell-bent on James or whatever. She's still heartbroken, and so to clear the air, to kind of start the new year with like a fresh slate, she decides that, listen, need to go speak to him, talk it out. So with Lydia, she ends up going back to the Beaufort house that day, kind of trying to air things out with James, but at the same time he realizes that he wants her back and will do anything. So that's what you get there. Then the next day in the car, you have this other scene wherein James finally finds out Lydia's secret, and here's where you start to get some emotional sibling support and bonding, especially after their fight. So that's another, I feel like, stereotypical scene that happens after this one specifically, and now he truly realizes that he needs to clean up his act because lots of people in his life need him. It's not only his own grief, and while that's definitely important, he needs to be a support system for the others that need him as well, which is why here now you start to get like a, I don't know, change almost in the book, like a 360, wherein now he's finally got his head back in the game and he's not in that fogged mental state anymore. So things are actually going to start to happen, but they still don't feel like it. Here also, because now he's rebonded with Lydia or whatever, she manages to talk sense into James that, listen, you need to win Ruby back. Like I said, she's the biggest Ruby James supporter apart from myself, which is kind of perfect because that finally goes through into his skull or whatever, and he decides she's correct. And the way he decides to go about doing this or whatever is by making a grand gesture, because everything else that has happened between the two of them or whatever, nothing can make up for it the way a good grand old gesture can. And so he decides first thing next day or whatever in school, that's what he's gonna do, and that's what he does. Because in the chapter after that, you find out that he's already waiting for the events committee team or whatever when they are going to start up their meeting. Ruby's wondering why, because in the previous book, if you remember, he leaves the team after he's able to join the lacrosse team again, except here he comes in clutch to say if they allow him or whatever, he's ready to come rejoin the committee because he feels like he could be a good asset to it, but it's really just so he can spend more time with her. And so here we are, he's rejoined the committee now, giving in some grand good old ideas, and that's gesture number one. So now, despite his like busy calendar and schedule with lacrosse and everything else going on with Beaufort and management and stuff, he still decides to come help them out, take out the time. And now they're currently organizing something called the charity gala, which is going to take place in the month of February. Very important to remember because lots of things happen at that one specific event, so keep that on the forefront of your mind along with the Ophelia detail, because they will come back later to haunt you, and that's where we are at right now. So then now in the chapter after that, you basically find out that James has been accepted into Oxford, and in the midst of everything else, he also has like a management meeting at Beaufort, which has taken his mind off of things, and he suddenly realizes that he's just like a puppet in the grand scheme of things, and that's truly making everything worse because now he's overwhelmed with everything else that's going on. And so he ends up going to meet Ruby or whatever, visit her at her house. For context, she also got accepted into Oxford, except when he comes to her, she honestly feels like he's come to her as if she's his emotional crutch or whatever, and she loses it because even though a lot is happening in his life, specifically with Beaufort, his mom's death, Lydia's pregnancy that he just found out, and then Oxford finally getting accepted and everything else with his uncertainty about his future, Ruby also has things going on in her life, and he just cannot pop in out of nowhere, especially when they don't really mean anything to each other anymore. They're both suffering through that phase of heartbreak, which is why she kind of kicks him out. And so from here, where does he go to? A party. You expected it. He's trying to party away his grief and sorrow with his friends, except even over there, when Elaine comes up to him, the girl he kissed or whatever, he just turns her away because he's missing Ruby. He just realizes his life cannot move on without her. And this is again a pivotal moment in the book, but at the same time it just doesn't feel like a lot because this entire book, half of it at least goes on groveling now, and the other half doesn't really feel very important. And so this is why I don't really like this book. It's really reminding me all the reasons why, but again, it's important in the grand scheme of things, especially for the next one, which I really enjoyed. So I'm gonna have to slog my way through because the next one's gonna get so good. But until then, here we are right now. Now on a complete other hand or whatever, since we've been getting like a lot of glimpses into their somewhat happening on and off romance or whatever, Ruby and James, now we get a glimpse into Ruby's dynamic with her best friend Lynn, because their parents or whatever, Ruby's, they end up throwing this like Oxford celebration party for the kids that got in, basically Ruby and Lynn. And while they're there, Ruby and Lynn kind of end up having this heart-to-heart conversation, and you actually watch them being friends or whatever, and suddenly more secrets are coming to light, because throughout the entire book you've been noticing Lynn kind of behaving weird and off around Cyril, who's in James's friend group, and Lynn used to be in the same friend group before her father became poor or whatever, and then everything else happened. He lost his money, he lost his estate, and they kicked her out of the group and shit. You need to watch the first video to get the proper summary of things. But before everything else happened and she lost it all, Cyril used to be her best friend, and she admits to Ruby now that she actually used to be in love with him. And ever since then, for the last couple years, there's been this like on and off thing happening between the two of them. But now, ever since Cordelia Beaufort died, for context, Cyril likes Lydia. So Cyril, she thinks, is now offering support to Lydia in times of grief, which is not happening, but she thinks so. And so she is kind of devastated and heartbroken over that. And again, lots of secrets coming to light. For me personally, off topic or whatever, but I'm actually watching Gossip Girl for the first time on Netflix, and it just gives me those vibes because there's a lot of like complicated dramatic relationships happening here and there, and this is definitely something that's happening, but they end up having that conversation, bonding over it, and it's definitely something again to keep in mind because you don't see a lot of that dynamic in the book, at least up until this point. And I really appreciated that because Lynn's always been there for her since day one or whatever, and I just wanted that bestie dynamic back, so I'm happy we got it. Anyway, back to his big moves or whatever, his big gestures. James ends up getting someone called Alice Campbell, who is someone who Ruby admires from Oxford, to come in to give the closing speech at the charity gala. And so that's already a huge thing for Ruby or whatever because she's been admiring that woman since literally forever. And so big move activated, he's pulling in all his cards, and thanks to all of this, Ruby's heart kind of melts. So she decides, okay, she's gonna give him somewhat a chance, wants to hang out with him again. And so here's what happens next. They need to kind of go pick up this like photo booth for the charity gala again as part of everything in the management and stuff. And so she ends up asking him to come along with her. It's more of those like useless errands or whatever, but she just wants him to tag along so they can spend time and actually speak through their feelings like adults. And so he agrees. They end up going to pick it up, except while at it again, you're reminded of their chemistry because they have this like moment in the photo booth when they're trying to see if it still works and shit, and they all like end up getting this like photo, and instead of even looking at the photo strip that comes out of it, he ends up tucking it away and keeping it for himself for later, not throwing it the way Ruby wanted it to. And so again, that's something to keep in mind. He still loves her, and you are getting glimpses into that by just for me personally, it's very grey, but I still don't feel it, and it's still not hitting hard enough. But that's definitely something that does happen, and it would look nice adapted into the show, especially because this is one of those scenes that I don't know why it reminds me of the dress scene wherein she's walking down the stairs in the first season of the show and he looks up at her, and for some reason it really reminds me of that. It definitely will give you those vibes, but I don't really know if it's enough for being the saving grace specifically for this book, because like I keep saying, I just don't find the groveling to be enough. There's only a couple things that happen here that aren't sustainable in the long term or whatever, especially considering what he did despite everything else. And so again, if you want to see my full thoughts on the book or whatever, because I do believe I go into detail, you can watch my spoiler free vlog. This is not supposed to be about my thoughts, but I'm tempted to give it anyway because there's a lot that's happening in this book that is irking me out and trying to push me away from reading, but I'm going to persevere for you guys. Anyway, fast forward to the next day. Now Ember is kind of helping Ruby pick out her outfit for the gala or whatever, and she kind of invites herself along as well because Ember's always wanted to go to a Maxton Hall party, and because now Ruby will be going away to Oxford, she wants to spend as much time as she can with Ember, so she agrees. So now keep in mind, Ember and Ruby both are going to the charity gala, and this is again very important in the grand scheme of things because this is going to give you a glimpse into Ember kind of having her dynamics with Ruby's friend group from Maxton Hall, and so very important in the long run. Anyway, now fast forward to before they're setting up for the actual event. It's about to happen, but then the event planners, they messed up their schedule or something like that, so they cancelled, and now all the kids have to go ahead and organize everything for the specific gala because the event planners aren't coming in. So they're getting all the materials, they just don't have the help to kind of do it, which is why Lexington, who is the principal, he ends up calling in the lacrosse boys to come help the events committee. And in the midst of everything else, now you watch James and Ruby's friend group kind of blend in together, helping each other out, and at the same time you get more Ruby James scenes wherein he's trying to do everything in his power to make up for her forgiveness. And this is another groveling scene. Towards the end of it, however, when everyone else ends up leaving, there's only Ruby and James left behind, and they finally end up having a talk about everything that happened. Again, another heart-to-heart coming in place, and this is where the slow burn truly finally pays off because they actually have that emotional connection building back up again. And again, I don't necessarily support what he does. It's a very grey thing considering his mom passed away and everything else, but they finally make things up. The slow burn is paying off because they think that they'll give themselves a chance again, and that's where my 53% ends. So now I'm gonna go get back to the book. If this update was half-hearted, please do not come after me because genuinely I'm so bored of reading this. These books are not worth a reread in my opinion. I'm so sorry if they're like your favorites or whatever, but for for me personally is just boring me out, because it's good for the first time, it's definitely good to watch the show, but otherwise it doesn't have a lot of substance and it's not holding my attention. I've started like 5 other books on Kindle in the time being or whatever, and it's just not helping me. So I'm gonna go get back to Save Me, shut this out or whatever, and until then I'll see you guys hopefully soon, maybe at the 75% mark, because imagine how like honestly satisfying that would be. 25, 53 and then 75, whatever. But I'll come see you all at 75% when I have more updates to give you. But I definitely want to finish this book tonight so I don't fall into worse of a slump, and so I can start new books over the weekend, because truly this book is not doing it for me. It's truly the worst one in the series. Why do we have it? It definitely could have been cut so much shorter, but at the same time, even if it wasn't cut short, I feel like if more substance was added between the two of them and given more weight, that would have definitely made up for it. Because if we got more scenes that actually mattered, I feel like it would have been nicer. Here it's more tell but then not actually show, and I'm not enjoying that the way I enjoyed the first book, because that was more actions over anything else. So here we are. That's just personal opinion. I think I'm just gonna give this book 3 stars again once I'm done with it, but until I go ahead and finish, I still have to go and give you thoughts. So I will go ahead and continue reading and hopefully catch up with you all later in the night once I have the 75% hit. But that's where we're at right now. That's basically updates. Not a lot happens in this book. It's definitely a filler second book syndrome book, so you don't have to worry about missing out on a lot. But definitely stay tuned for when I do the third book video, because that one, there's so much crazy shit that goes on. Even at the end of this, the last 10%, that you wouldn't want to miss that, because that's where the drama and action kicks back in and I get focused again. So I'm gonna go persevere till that point at least, and see you all in a bit once I've made it. Bye. Okay guys, so as planned last night, I did go ahead and finish the book out. I just didn't come in for the 75% update because I figured I didn't have like a lot of notes to speak about, because it was basically just like couples dynamic and family dynamic and friend dynamic, and like that the specific scenes or whatever aren't really important in the grand scheme of things. It just shows you like an inner glimpse into their group. So nothing wrong with it or whatever, I just didn't have enough notes to come speak about, and so I didn't really see the point in coming and yapping, which is why I finished the book in one whole go. And now I have so many more notes to come discuss. The whole board is filled up that I figured it's perfect, because I finished the book. I have quite a few thoughts to give you. I have a lot of things to discuss with you, and so let's just directly lock in, because it's going to be a really long one. But basically now I have the other half, the other 50% of the book to summarize for you, because I'm done now. I'm giving this book I think 3.5 stars again, because not my favorite in the series. It's important overall, but I feel like it definitely could have been cut short in the slow, unmoving, boring bits, and I feel like it could have been dragged out in the bits that actually mattered, because I feel like you don't have a lot that's really attention grabbing in this book the way it was in the first and third books. And you know, maybe the drama is a little toned down because you do need healing arc, but at the same time you don't need too much healing arc, because then it gets boring, and that's what happened in this book. So take with that what you will. Now to summarize and catch you up on what happened since the last time I came in and spoke, we have the chapter wherein the charity gala finally takes place, and for context you just need to keep in mind, it's not really very important, but Kieran, who is on the events committee who helped organize the gala, he kind of likes Ruby. So Ruby kind of brings Ember along to the gala as promised or whatever, because they had that deal back when they made it or whatever, and so Ember's come along, except Ruby kind of leaves Ember with Kieran so she can go work on the gala like details and stuff, look after every little bit, micromanage. And as she's doing all of that, Ember kind of slips away because she's sick of being, you know, guard dog followed or whatever, and she ends up meeting someone who's from James's group, and you won't even expect who. It's Ren. So Ember and Ren kind of have this like conversation or whatever. They start things off or whatever. You can kind of feel the chemistry, except they end up kissing, and it leaves a really sour taste in your mouth as the reader, because if you've read the first book or if you watched the first video where I was speaking about it, Ren also did the same thing with Ruby back when she was like a fresher at Maxton Hall or whatever, at one of the back to school parties, wherein he drugged her drink or whatever, and then he went to like kiss her and shit, except she got away. And now he's doing it with Ember, except Ember actually catches on and she tells him to like back off or whatever, and then they have this like heart-to-heart conversation, and suddenly she's like falling for him or whatever, except she doesn't know the whole context and background with her older sister. So already it's definitely setting up for drama that will come in the third book. It's just I feel like the way it's set up, it's a little rushed as well, and the way it will be resolved in the third book is not my favorite, but it's definitely there and something to consider because that will come up again. Now in the midst of all of this, James kind of pulls Ember away from Ren, kind of tells him to like back off and stay away from her because age difference, duh. And then not just that, they end up having this fight or whatever because Ren thinks James has changed after being around Ruby too much, and James is fighting, saying that it doesn't really matter, love changes you as a person. And so they need to grow up and just deal with their shit and move on and maybe speak through things, because Ren thinks James isn't really there for them the way he used to be thanks to his relationship with Ruby now. And a lot to consider here. I don't even know what to say, but they're just being kids basically. And so they have that argument. Ember goes back to Ren or whatever at some point later in the night, and Ember and Ren essentially end up having more of like a heart-to-heart conversation, wherein Ren now reveals to Ember that he's actually moving out from his house because his father lost all of their like fortune or whatever gambling on stocks, and thanks to that now he's like lashing out on James, and that's the reason behind everything. And James just doesn't know about the truth, why his behavior is the way it is, and so on and so forth. And so Ember is definitely there, someone he can confide in now, and they're getting closer. But at the same time, it's very questionable again, considering what happened with Ruby in the past. And so that's something to keep in mind, because he isn't like the best person ever. Anyway, later, once they get back home or whatever, the next day, we have like a Ruby chapter, except in that she actually speaks about how she goes into Ember's room, and Ember's like texting someone on her phone under the covers, and Ruby's just wondering who it is, if she's got a crush on someone from the party. And as a reader, it's Ren, Ruby doesn't. And so again, just something I wanted to mention, because now you can actually see them interacting, they're becoming friends slowly and suddenly, and then that's what's happening. In the meanwhile, in the household scenes or whatever, there's this one bit that's mentioned wherein they have like a shared household Kindle, so they have like every single genre on it, which is so funny to me because I cannot imagine sharing my Kindle with anyone at this point. I give it to my sister, like sometimes the other one, but this one specifically, I can't imagine mixing my book up with everyone else's. And so they have a shared Kindle. That's just something I wanted to mention because damn, that's crazy. Anyway, so in the midst of all of these like household domestic scenes, she ends up like texting James. They have a conversation, and suddenly he asks if he can come over. So you finally have the scene wherein James comes home, he meets her family or whatever, and they have this like heart-to-heart talk. And in the midst of everything, they're finally starting to speak about everything that went down in the past like month or so. And as all of that's happening, Ruby also tells him about her Ren secret, so the things that happened with her and Ren in the past. And now keep in mind, James knows, but Ember still doesn't know, so that's again something to remember. Basically now it's like a really couple, almost like domestic scene at this point, because nothing really happens. I feel like they just sit down, they study together. James tells Ruby that he likes reading blogs, and Ruby tells James that she likes watching ASMR. And then Mr. Bell, the dad, he ends up asking James to stay over because he's making like spaghetti, and so James is staying over for dinner at the Bells. They all end up playing Jenga, and so not a lot is happening. You can kind of tell, you have to watch the scenes to understand truly, but it just shows you like inner dynamic glimpses, not really specific things that will move the plot forward. And so that's why I skipped over bits of these, because again, you don't need extra details into every single bit. You just need to know that hey, they're having bonding moments, but in the grand scheme of things, that really doesn't matter in terms of plot and the dramatic storyline, which is really what we're all here for. So moving on, now the events committee is tasked with planning their next like event or whatever, and so they end up choosing Midsummer Night's Dream as their theme or whatever. And remember this, because this is the event where every single thing goes to shit, so very important, but that's basically what's going on. Anyway, again, I've written after that there's like a glimpse into friend dynamics, nothing else. You also get to have this like conversation between Ruby and Percy, when you find out that Percy was actually really close friends with James's mom. He used to drive her when she was in her 20s or whatever, so he is devastated over her death, but it's not because he loved her or anything, it's just because they were really good friends. Again, that's a theory I've been seeing circulating around, and they weren't like involved or whatever. She did stay loyal to her husband. Even her husband, he wasn't like involved in her death. Her death was natural, and so people are definitely going ahead of themselves in terms of the dramatics, but nothing crazy is happening here. Just know that they were really good friends, and that's definitely mentioned here, but then nothing goes off of it. He's just going to be a really important character in the next book. Anyway, so now you're getting more scenes of Ruby and James as a couple to kind of give you the kind of insane chemistry they had again in book 1, but it doesn't even come close because they have their first date. Nothing wrong about that, but I just didn't feel the vibes or whatever. And in the midst of everything, they do end up speaking about how he's got like a Goodreads account now, and she's recommending books of her TBR and Death Note and stuff, which is so crazy to me, because when I read this for the first time at the beginning of this year, I didn't know shit about that. But right now, my little sister, like I said, I've given her my other Kindle or whatever, she's reading Death Note, so now I understand, and maybe I will read it at some point too, to understand the hyperfixation of it all. But that's basically what they end up doing. And then they're making like hangout plans for the next day or whatever at the Beaufort's house. So it's nothing like special, crazy, great or whatever. It's just showing you like what's going on, filler scenes almost, because you don't have dramatics every other chapter. That's going to make the book a little too over dramatic and then numb you out to actually the stuff that matters or whatever. So now you're just getting like basic bare minimum scenes or whatever, because now that they finally made up and they're a couple again, you need those couple scenes before shit goes down again. So that's what you're getting. But basically at the Beaufort's dinner or whatever the next night, Ruby ends up going, and as it turns out, their dad actually comes back from one of his meetings out of town, so he wasn't supposed to be there, but now that he's there, she ends up staying. But then the atmosphere is bad, there's a lot of tension or whatever, everything feels stuck up, and you get like again a glimpse into family dynamic, and it's gonna start getting important now, so keep your ears open or whatever, start paying attention. But basically now the filler scenes start to come to a close, because later at night when Ruby's gone and everyone's in bed or whatever, there's this like crashing sound in the dead of the morning or whatever, and James just freaks out because he thinks something went wrong with Lydia. Except when he gets out of bed to go and investigate and check, guess what? He finds his dad, and he's probably drunk or whatever. He's like yelling at this one painting, the family painting they have hung up in the wall, except he's yelling specifically at the part where his mom is in. So James's dad, Mortimer, is kind of yelling at the area in the painting where Cordelia is painted. So he's kind of like, I think he's drunk, so he's like trying to communicate with Cordelia, except she's dead, and this is where he starts lashing his own emotions out. He ends up taking like a glass of alcohol or whatever, throwing it at it, ruining the painting. It goes dripping down, the paint is all messed up, and this is truly where you get to see his dynamic. And the first time when I was reading it, I genuinely thought you'd get like a healing arc or some sort of redemption arc for him at this point, because now you start to understand how things went wrong in his life too, and shit's going down. Basically, that's what you understand, except you don't actually get that. This is just like a scene again given in there to show you context, but context for what I will never understand. But basically he's shown like crying or whatever. James, the son, he ends up going to comfort him or whatever. Nothing really happens off it, but that's also something that gives you like a glimpse into what's going on in Mortimer's mind, because everyone thinks he's the villain at this point, and while he kind of is, it definitely is a good way to show you like the grey balanced out areas, because nothing is like truly black and white in the series. Now prepare for the dramatics, because it's gonna go crazy, it's gonna go wild. Remember the whole Midsummer Night's Dream, that event that I said that would cause all the shit to go down, because that's where everything is gonna go to hell? Yeah, so Ember ends up making Lydia's dress for that event, because Lydia's like heavily pregnant, she cannot go buy anything from the market, everyone would know, everyone would gossip about it, and so Ember is making Lydia's dress, and the girls, they're all going together to the event. So Ember's going with Lydia and Ruby, and that's basically what's happening. But basically after that you get another couple scenes with like James and Ruby, them as a couple or whatever, nothing too important. But as that's happening, Ruby kind of speaks about how Graham Sutton, the teacher Lydia's involved with, he ends up walking into the event with that woman, I think her name was Philippa or Pippa or something like that, but she's the Oxford instructor who was trying to, get them online to answer their interview questions correctly or whatever, and he ends up bringing her as his date to the event. And so Ruby's just like, hey, when Lydia sees that, she's gonna be so heartbroken, heart shattered or whatever, except Lydia's standing right there and she sees the whole thing, so she literally just runs out, and this is where it's gonna go to hell, because Graham kind of goes out to follow her. They end up confronting each other, and while he still loves her or whatever, he needs to show like a different front to everyone else, and he speaks about how he cannot do it anymore, which is why he's thinking of like quitting the job or whatever, just so he can be with her again. And that's basically going on, and they have this like heart-to-heart conversation, and again things are being repaired in the middle of the two of them, and that's great for the two of them. Except here's where dramatics come in, because you guys remember Cyril from James's group? He's standing right there, and he ends up watching the whole interaction, and now suddenly he knows about Lydia's affair with Sutton that no one knows about. And the worst part is, I don't know if I mentioned it, but Cyril has had the biggest crush on Lydia ever. He's been in love with her since forever. So when he watches the fact that she is already with another guy or whatever, and he can't do anything about it, he is heartbroken. And suddenly, now that he's drunk and heartbroken, the worst mix ever, what is he gonna do next? But basically James kind of ends up going after Cyril to kind of calm things down. At home later, Lydia and Sutton, they have this like talk over the phone. Ruby tells that to James, but we don't actually know what they spoke about. But I'm assuming this is the point where she tells him that she's pregnant, so that secret came to light. Now everything's going to shit, because then now the next day, Ruby's kind of called to the principal's office for this like urgent matter or whatever, and right as she steps in, she knows something's wrong, and that's because she was called because someone from the parents committee, that is said to be the case, has gone ahead and mailed Lexington, the principal, photos of Ruby and Sutton, the teacher. They look like in a compromising position or whatever, like they're kissing or whatever, and so he thinks the two of them are having an affair, except it's actually those photos James took in book 1 in that first like event or whatever, wherein he still hated Ruby and he wanted shit on her, except they were just talking and it's just the camera lighting and angle that makes it look that way. And thanks to everything, because of the lead up, Ruby is now suspended from Maxton Hall, so is Graham, and now thanks to all these photos, everyone thinks Ruby and Graham were the ones having the affair. And Ruby actually looks, and the envelope that sent him the photos, the ones that he's showing now in the office, it has like a curved B as the sender's address. So suddenly she's wondering who the hell did this. She walks out of school, she ends up running into James. He's asking her what's gone wrong. She tells him, and then out of nowhere Cyril comes in to scene to ruin things all, because he ends up telling Ruby that hey, James is the one who took the photos, and that's where it kind of ends. You do have an epilogue that comes into place where you kind of follow Ember's perspective now, and she's actually skipping school to meet a mystery someone at a cafe, and it's no other than Ren. So their friendship has blossomed maybe into something else, who knows, but that's basically where the book ends off. You have a lot of tension building, a lot of dramatics escalated, and now it's all come to a head wherein in the last book it's finally gonna come crashing all down, and it's gonna be so worth it. So until then, we have gone ahead and finished this video out. We've reached the end of this vlog. Like I said, this book was 3.5 stars for me because it just isn't the one for me, but here we are. We've gone through the most difficult book of the series, at least in my opinion, so you guys can expect the next video in the series where I'll be giving you a spoiler breakdown of the third book coming in very soon now, because listen, I didn't want to get through this book, but now that I have, I can't wait to get to the last one and just be done with it all, which is why I'll see y'all in hopefully a few weeks time once I start recording that video and giving you a full spoiler breakdown. But because I promised it, it's definitely coming, so you don't have to worry about that. I just don't know about timeline. Until then, like I said, we have reached the end of the vlog. Since I've been yapping for so long now, I think I'm just gonna go and we'll end it right here. So hopefully this hasn't been the longest and most boring video ever. Thank you guys for coming along with me for such a long ass video. If you guys had a fun time, definitely like, comment, share, subscribe. YouTube things, and stay tuned for the next video whenever it comes out, because it'll be in the next like month or so. So until then, take care. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. See you soon. I'll see you all next week, and until then, stay safe out there. I'm gonna go get myself a glass of water, but that's it. I'll see you all. Bye.